So recently AthleanX made a video about the only exercises you need to get jacked, which was essentially just a video talking about the best exercises for each muscle group. Did I watch this video? No, because all other fitness influencers besides this other kid that looks like me are complete garbage. But since this is a pretty interesting idea and I figure a lot of you guys are interested in my opinion, I figured I'd make my own video discussing the best exercises for each muscle group to obviously get jacked. Before I get into the exercises, if you're looking for workout programs, whether it's to get more aesthetic or to improve athletic performance, be sure to check out my 90-day aesthetic body blueprint or my 120-day peak athleticism package. These will both be in the description. But if you think you'd benefit from one-on-one coaching, I just started one-on-one coaching, which will also be in the description. The first muscle group I'll start with is the chest. Just like all other muscle groups, I won't be considering machines for the chest. This is because multiple research studies have shown that there's no difference between machines and free weights for muscle growth, and free weights will be far better for athletic performance as well as shoulder health because free weights actually work on shoulder stability. For the chest, the two options I'm considering are a flat bench and an incline bench. I'm not considering any sort of decline bench because the lower chest is so much easier to develop. When it comes to getting jacked and building an aesthetic physique, I'll have to go for an incline bench press. This is because a recent study showed that the incline bench press has the same amount of mid and low pec growth as a flat bench press, but it had greater growth in the upper chest, which is harder to develop. When it comes to barbell versus dumbbell, I always like to say that they're both great options and that you should include both in your routine. But if I had to pick one, I'd probably go with a dumbbell bench press. Although the barbell bench press is better for strength and loading up the exercise, I feel like the dumbbell bench press is more versatile as it will be easier to prevent muscular imbalances and you won't be limited by the bar when it comes to range of motion. So the chest exercise I'm picking is the dumbbell incline bench press. Now onto one of the most aesthetic muscles, and it's the back. When it comes to back development, you want to separate it into horizontal pulls, so something like a row, and vertical pulls, so something like a lat pull down. It's super hard for me to pick in between these two because they're both super essential for complete back development. When it comes to the horizontal pull, I'd have to say the barbell row is one of my favorite exercises, and when it comes to the vertical pull, it'd be some sort of pull-up variation. It's super hard for me to pick in between these two just because they're both essential for complete back development, but I'm going to go with a vertical pull because the core demand it requires is super beneficial. And when it comes to my vertical pull variation, I'd have to go with a standard pull-up. There are three main pull-up variations: a neutral grip pull-up, a chin-up, and a standard pull-up. When it comes to pure back development, I wouldn't go with the chin-up just because it has a far greater bicep emphasis. And when it comes to picking between the neutral grip pull-up and the pronated grip pull-up, I'd have to go with the pull-up 10 out of 10 times when it comes to pure back development. This is because research has shown that the pronated grip pull-up hits the most back muscles out of all the pull-up variations. So if I had to pick one exercise to get a jacked back, I'd have to go with a standard pull-up. If you can't do pull-ups, you should try and progress up to pull-ups, but doing a standard lat pull-down would be my option if I couldn't do pull-ups yet. Now onto the shoulders, which just like the back, play a huge part in aesthetics because it accentuates your V-taper. Picking one exercises for the shoulders is pretty tough because the shoulders have three different heads and they all do pretty different things. But for my shoulder exercise, I'm gonna go with an overhead press. The overhead press emphasizes the front delts, but it does hit the lateral delts pretty well. And although the overhead press doesn't hit the rear delts well, I'm not too concerned because the rear delts are being hit in the pull-up. When it came to this selection, I was picking between this and lateral raises. The reason why I went with the overhead press is because it's a compound movement and it's a foundational human movement with it being a vertical push. Unlike lateral raises, the overhead press hits a ton of different muscles including the front delt, lateral delt, and it hits the core tremendously well if you're doing it standing up, so don't be lazy, do it standing up. So my shoulder exercise selection will be the overhead press. Now onto the arms, and I'll be starting with the biceps. The biceps will be hit pretty well in the pull-up, but since I picked a pronated grip pull-up, which will have a little bit less bicep emphasis, extra work will be very beneficial. When it comes to hitting the biceps, I do like to include some sort of compound exercise like a chin-up, and then some isolation work hitting the biceps from a variety of different angles. But unfortunately for this kind of challenge thing, I do have to pick one exercise, and I'll be going with the standing bicep curl. Just like the incline bench press, I'll be going with dumbbells here as well because it will help prevent any muscular imbalances, and I'll be able to supinate at the top of the movement. I do like hitting the biceps from its lengthened and shortened position as well, but if I had to pick one exercise, I'll just go in between and just do a standard dumbbell bicep curl. Both of the pressing exercises I included, so the incline dumbbell bench press and the overhead press, do hit the triceps pretty well. But adding in some isolation work will be very beneficial, especially when you consider the fact that presses don't hit the long head of the tricep very well. So my tricep exercise selection will have a greater emphasis on the long head of the triceps. There are some people that are saying that overhead tricep exercises hit the long head better, and there are some people that are saying that they don't. Which is why I personally like to hit the triceps from a variety of different angles in my workout routine, just because if you're including a variety, it doesn't really matter which exercise hits the long head more, you're gonna get complete tricep development. But when it comes to what I think hits the long head of the triceps better, it would have have to be just standard tricep exercises, so tricep exercises that are not done overhead. And some people might disagree with this, but here are a couple recent research studies that show that the triceps don't respond better when trained at overhead position. When it comes to tricep isolation, I really like tricep pushdowns, and if I had to pick one tricep exercise to get jacked, it would have to be a single arm tricep extension, as doing the exercise with one arm will allow the central nervous system to focus only on one arm, and again it will help with muscular imbalances, especially when you consider that a lot of people have one arm that's bigger than the other one. Now onto the legs, and the first muscle group I'll look at are the quads. And if you watch my channel frequently, you know what exercise I'm picking. It's a barbell squat. I'd even argue that the barbell squat is the king of pretty much all exercises. The barbell squat is an amazing compound exercise that hit the quads tremendously well. And when you consider the fact that you're going to get tremendous glute, adductor, and core benefits, it's pretty much a no-brainer to pick this exercise. The reason why I went with a barbell squat over a zerker, front squat, or goblet squat is because the barbell squat is so much easier to load up on, which makes it easier to progress in and build strength. Now into the hamstring exercise to get some beefy hamstrings. The hamstrings aren't hit well in squat variations, so it's important to include an exercise that focuses on them. When lots of people think of hamstring development, they think of leg curls, which is a stupid idea. This is because the hamstrings don't typically work in isolation outside the gym, and the exercise I'm about to pick is a foundational human leg movement, so you'll not only get hypertrophic benefits, but functional and athletic benefits as well. When it comes to hitting your hamstrings, you should prioritize the hinge movement, which I mentioned earlier is a foundational human movement. So I was in between the RDL and deadlift for the hamstrings, but I went with the RDL. Don't get me wrong, standard barbell and trap bar deadlifts are great exercises, but when it comes to pure hamstring development, I'd have to go with the RDL. So yeah, the hamstring exercise I'm gonna pick to get jacked is the RDL. Now onto the glutes, and if you watch my most attractive muscles video, you know that the glutes were actually ranked number 1. Luckily, the RDL and the squats will already hit the glutes very well, but adding in extra work is definitely not a bad thing, and the number 1 exercise to hit your glutes is the hip thrust. The hip thrust is a tremendous exercise to load up the glutes. Two popular variations are a standard barbell hip thrust and a single leg hip thrust, and if I had to select one, I'd go with a standard barbell hip thrust just because it's far easier to load up on. Now onto the last muscle group, and it's the core. I can tell you now, so many stupid influencers will go, oh, do sit-ups, man, that's the only muscle of the core. The core doesn't just involve your abs, it involves so many more muscles. If you're doing all the other exercises I mentioned in this video, you'll get very good core development because you're prioritizing ground-based free weight exercises that forces you to stabilize your trunk. The only issue is that you're not working your core in the transverse plane, aka you're not working on rotation. A good example are pull-ups. During a pull-up, you're resisting your body moving forward and backwards and side to side, but you're not resisting your body rotating to each side. So it's so important to make sure that we're working on this. This is why if I had to include a core exercise, it would have to be some sort of rotational exercise, and I'll go with barbell rotations. The reason why I like this exercise is because you're getting a lot of volume in terms of rotation work, but you're also working on rotational power to some degree, which is super important for sports. And for those of you who are saying, oh, training your obliques will lead to a blocky waist, I can promise you now that's an irrational fear, and in my opinion, developed obliques actually lead to a more aesthetic physique. And those are the only exercises that you need to get jacked. If you want to know what the most attractive exercises are according to science, be sure to check out this video.